up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel, Serendipity. Today I'm going to be reacting to why do Europeans dislike Americans so much. I feel like it's been a pretty big topic, especially with the following years. It kind of sucks that our media shows so much negativity and ignorant people more than it shows the good and the intelligent people, and it's just like media is always looking for the worst. But I do see from the European side too. I'm the person that looks at things both ways, or at least try to see from both perspectives, and I see from both perspectives. I just hope in this video that they actually talk about real problems. I've seen a couple things just on the internet of Europeans saying something that they hate about America, and it's always something dumb. Well, not always, but sometimes it's always something dumb, or just something you can tell they watch way too much media, American media, and they're just too into their phones instead of actually knowing America. And then some have actual valid points and why they dislike America, or well, it's kind of hard to dislike Americans because not always what you see is, you have how many, 300 and something million people live here with a bunch of different backgrounds, a bunch of different races, and yeah, it's kind of hard to say you dislike Americans when Americans come in all different shapes and sizes. But let's get into this video. Let's hope it's a good one.
How Europeans see Americans?
I think it's a third world country with a lot of money. Very negative.
Very negative.
Yeah, I don't see anything positive about America.
I think they're a bit stupid. American TikTokers, they earn too much money with what they do. Like in Belgium, you have to work.
That kind of right there is what I'm talking about, dumb stuff. There's way too much to dislike to come up with something obviously she's too much on her phone and don't know any actual
For
reason.
money, and they just make videos and that's it.
Oh my god.
I might be completely wrong about this, but I think it was a little bit cooler to be American when I was a kid. I've lived in Europe for several years now, and look, I've romanticized this continent quite a bit. I really like living here. But there's a funny feeling that I cannot shake, and I think it has to do with how Europeans view Americans, or how Europeans view me when they discover that I'm American. And it's not entirely positive. This feeling has not gone away even though I've been here for a few years now. And it's not hatred, it's more like negative undertones, offhand comments or jokes that are made, and it makes me feel not very cool. And by the way, I recognize not all—
to be honest, everybody picks on a different country. You gotta say, is it coming from a hatred perspective, or is it coming from a joke and just coming from, just trying to mess with you? There's different ways you can take it.
All Europeans dislike Americans. That is a massive generalization. But I'm bringing this up because it's been enough of a trend for me to confidently talk about this as something that's really happening in the world. I don't think it's just in my head. It just seems—
I just realized, the reason I say that is for a lot of this stuff that I've been seeing, been reacting to, is British stuff, and the British goes after everyone. So that's why I say it depends on how you take it. From my perspective, are you taking it as a joke, or are you taking it yeah, okay.
When it comes to Europeans' view of Americans, there's a lot to dislike. I don't necessarily entirely disagree. I have plenty of my own criticisms about the United States and the way of life over there. And I think that all places, all societies merit criticism. That's how we get better. So this applies to everyone. But there's something deeper going on here that I want to explore. On a personal level, my own identity as an American, but also the identity of Americans on the global stage. We don't live in a bubble, and it turns out the whole world has opinions about us. Now, I have my own theories about what's going on here, but I thought I'd get to the root of the matter and ask Europeans themselves.
It makes me a little bit nervous talking to strangers, but I'm just gonna go for it.
What are the stereotypes? That's a good question.
Bah moi, quand je pense aux Américains, je pense à la bouffe et tout.
Dans quel sens? Le fast-food?
Ouais.
Ok.
Les McDo. Ouais.
McDo. Ouais, ok.
Hamburger et tout.
Mais les Français adorent McDo.
Oui. Bah, on y était il y a 2 minutes.
Donc c'est pas forcément négatif ça.
Non, non.
Ok.
Mais c'est l'image.
Actually, I like Americans
Okay.
because they are like very chilled. America is like so expensive for good food. Like
Yeah.
Now that's a good topic. That's a good reason
for like
to dislike. And that's one big thing that I dislike is how cheap bad food is compared to good food. And like food in general right now is crazy expensive. So like, yeah, it's horrible.
fruits and all this fresh stuff, it's like so expensive.
J'ai deux visions un peu.
Ok.
J'ai la version où ils sont trop cool et tout, et la version vraiment le beauf américain.
Do you think the stereotypes about Americans are true?
Kind of. I have a classmate that is American, and we are talking like about our traditional foods. And the American was like, my typical food is hamburger, ice cream, like the McDonald's one. And we are like, oh, so McDonald's is your typical food? She was like, yeah, kind.
I blame that more on parents or something. I don't know. Most of my childhood, we never ate out. Never ate out. It was always a home-cooked meal, and it wasn't hamburgers and fries. It was home-cooked, a bunch of different things. So her parents never cooked, or I don't know what part of America she's in, but she's definitely not around here.
Could I just take a couple minutes to ask you a couple questions? It's okay if you don't have time, it's fine. Okay, all good. Have a nice day. The Americans don't have time for me. That's kind of funny. Would you mind if I asked you a couple questions?
Yeah. Polarized.
Polarized.
Extremely polarized.
Yeah. More than the Netherlands.
Much more.
Feel younger people feel the same way or differently about American?
I think even stronger.
Even stronger?
I think they
Okay.
feel even stronger.
Yeah, the older people, I feel maybe thinking of the World War II and World War I, in which the Americans did a very good job by helping, because Europe was not doing very well.
Yeah.
Ils connaissent que ce qui se passe dans leur pays.
I'm just gonna put it out there. I think one of America's biggest problems is like politics and greedy politicians and just greed in general. America and like the leaders of America and anybody that's in office has a very big greedy problem, and that's what's gonna hurt us the most.
Enfermés sur eux-mêmes. C'est-à-dire que c'est pas contre eux, mais qu'ils s'intéressent pas trop aux autres pays.
They know about their own country, but not about like other stuff in the world. They're overrated.
They're overrated. How? Like, they receive too much attention?
Yes. Too much hype.
Too much
on
hype.
the internet.
Are you also German?
Yes, I am.
And in Germany, you feel like German people have...
See, I feel like, I don't know, I don't like them. I feel like they're just too much in the media and think that, they don't have good reasons.
Positive view of Americans? Or
not really.
No,
I think
okay, so more negative.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you feel that there's been a change at all in terms of how Americans are viewed, like in the last 10, 15 years?
I think so, yes. Especially due to the Trump and the Tea Party things happening. It got more polarized, and that made it more negative in my view.
There's more that I'd like to say about why I believe this dynamic is happening, why Europeans see Americans in this way. All right, time for me to share some of my own personal theories here. Here's why I think it was maybe a little bit cooler to be American in the past. I was born in the 90s, maybe like some of you. And back in the 90s...
I mean, was it ever really cool? I mean, there's always been hate, I feel like. I mean, you look back on anything, there's always been this. Maybe a little bit more now, but there's always been...
It's not like the United States or the world,
I don't think it's ever been really
didn't
cool.
have its problems. It definitely did. You're not gonna get any of that classic, nostalgic, those were the days kind of thing from me. But one thing I think we can all agree on is that back in the 90s, the internet had not yet completely taken over our lives like it has now. And in my view, the internet feels like it's taken whatever problems already existed and made them bigger and louder. That might actually be what the internet is best at, the fast transmission of ideas and information, which in turn amplifies them. And there's another thing that the internet is really good at, which is that it is a canvas for less curated or filtered versions of that information or ideas. There are less gatekeepers, so anyone can say anything. My theory is that as time has gone on, and as the internet has played a bigger and bigger role in our lives, the world has been exposed to a less curated version of the United States. You know, you had movies and TV and pop music reaching the entire world, but it wasn't like it is today with social media and even the news reaching so many more people. Nowadays, it feels like you cannot escape the news about the mass shootings that are constantly happening in the US or the insane election cycles. I think in some ways, the internet might have taken away some of our innocence, right? Some of our naivete. As a result, even more curated versions of culture, like the highly produced TV shows and movies, are reflecting the things that we're seeing. The unintelligent or simple American is a very believable archetype and not a new one. You've got at least one and often more than one character that perfectly fits that archetype in pretty much all American sitcoms, from Friends to How I Met Your Mother. And there are plenty of shows that play off of this very intentionally. I think of South Park and Family Guy and The Simpsons. And internationally, the contrast is even more stark. And it might just be me, but it does feel like the perception of Americans is deteriorating. I mean, I'm thinking about shows like Emily in Paris or The White Lotus. The White Lotus in particular blew me away because it felt so believable and oftentimes in a very depressing way. Clearly, Americans are not known for being refined or in touch with reality. This is particularly true of wealthy Americans. And why wouldn't Europeans feel this way? We are famously terrible at learning foreign languages. To many, we're seen as living in our own giant bubble.
A lot of people beforehand used to think like the US was like very cool and this really lovely place to go to, but I feel like everyone just thinks it's dangerous and that they don't care about their citizens. There's all these shootings going on, like their healthcare is horrible, their schooling's horrible.
So there's been a change.
I think it's always been like that. I think there's a change now because like social media is is making it more apparent.
America used to be, you know, like the American dream, like a lot of them used to be a big thing. Like gun crime is getting like publicized a lot more, so I think like the narrative is changing a little bit.
Je vois l'Amérique comme une grande puissance mondiale et je les vois comme des capitalistes. En fait, si t'as de l'argent, tu vis bien, mais si t'as pas d'argent, y a personne pour t'aider. Marche ou crève.
In France, we say the Americans are big and fat, but I love America. With the friends, the salary friends.
Donc il y a des côtés positifs et des côtés négatifs.
Ouais, c'est ça exactement. Globalement, les gens pensent ça, mais en même temps, tout le monde va aller à New York et tout le monde va aller aux États-Unis.
Ouais, d'accord, ok.
C'est ça en fait, ouais. Ils ont des préjugés, mais en même temps, c'est quand même un rêve d'y aller.
J'étais absolument ulcérée quand Trump était au pouvoir. De voir le comportement de cet homme, ça donne pas envie d'aller forcément dans ces conditions-là. Le fait que les gens soient très très armés, j'ai l'impression que je me sentirais pas en sécurité.
Most people love Canadians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you clarify you're a Canadian, they're like,
You're like, oh, Canada, where are you from in Canada? For me, it's like a lot about the money, like the times I went to New York and it's like, you know, winners and losers and, you know, you gotta make it and you gotta make loads of money and la 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 and then like if you don't have money you're like basically fucked. I would say extremes. It's like an extreme, you know, country, like very very rich.
I like her like opinion or her perspective or whatever. She
very very poor, eat very much, eat very 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 healthy, like extreme healthy, extreme like XXXL and McDonald's whatever.
Where are you from?
It's always McDonald's.
Perfect. So I'm doing a video on Europeans' view of Americans.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any opinions about that.
Oh, yeah.
So okay.
We're from Europe. No, we're not. We left the EU.
No, this is in Europe.
Do you feel like it's a more positive or a negative view of Americans?
I'd say negative. I feel like there's a lot going on there that's just a bit backwards.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we need to move along.
Yeah.
The like, you know, all the abortion laws coming in.
So politically.
And, like all the gun crimes, things like that. Like I imagine like most of the country is absolutely lovely, but there's some of the morals that are just a little bit off for me, so I struggle with that.
I agree, but I do think you all like proper chatty and that, and you're really energetic.
Yeah.
So it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
but I also agree with that as well.
Yeah.
It's lovely to meet Americans.
Yeah.
Love meeting Americans.
Okay, so why am I so interested in this topic? Well, over the last few years, I have shared my journey moving abroad and looking for a home, because that home is not the United States. I just don't feel connected to that country. Not as a home, even though I'm coming to realize that it did shape me in many ways. I'm just trying to find my place, but as I've said before, different people will treat you in different ways based off of how they perceive you. The first time I experienced this was during my high school exchange in France when I was 16 years old. Obama was president, and regardless of your personal political opinions or feelings, he was seen in a generally positive light abroad. So in a weird way, even though I was not responsible for electing him, I wasn't even of age to vote, that scored me some cool points. And then on top of it, 16-year-old French kids living in a small town in the west of France thought it was cool that I rode a yellow bus to school and that I had my own personal locker in the United States. So I was benefiting from all these things that I didn't really control at all. Then I get to Argentina a few years later, and I see what it's like to be on the flip side, where the general sentiment was more negative. I'm generalizing here, but there's a bit of an anti-American streak in Argentina. And I think this comes down to the image that the United States has of being a bit of a bully. I mean, Che Guevara is a bit of an anti-American, anti-capitalist symbol, right? So that was a very different experience, and now I'm back in Europe, and I've been here for a while, and the perception has changed yet again.
90% of the Dutchmen think Trump is quite strange.
Yeah.
They think Republicans are also quite strange. And that Americans are very Puritan.
This might just be me, but I do feel like the image of Americans has deteriorated a little bit over the last 10 years. That might come down to the government that's currently in power. It might come down to social media. This is a very complex thing, so I can't point to a single reason, but it's definitely a feeling that's there. Now, on a personal level, before I realized that this was going on, I was kind of unintentionally overcompensating. I felt like I needed to show that I wasn't the out-of-touch American in Europe. And the same thing happened to me in Argentina, where I was speaking with as much slang as I possibly could that I picked up over there, even when it was just way too much, when it was inappropriate. Que zarpado, boludo, está re piola, pibe, mal. Why was I acting like that? Was there a deeper need within me to be accepted by the people that I am surrounded by? To me, it's a little bit cringy to behave that way because it's overcompensating for something, which in this case was the identity that people were associating with me. Whatever it was, the out-of-touch, stupid American, or whatever it might be. But that's actually a me problem, not a problem with the world. I've come to realize that people can think whatever they want about you. It doesn't change who you are. If people see me as yet another dumb American, it doesn't mean that's true. And also, it doesn't mean all Americans are that way. I think we all know this. We all know that individuals don't necessarily follow the stereotypes, but it's also how people operate in a world of 8 billion people. I can't blame people for having formulated an idea about the place that I'm from, considering how much culture is exported from that place. A part of me used to try to distance myself as much as possible from anything and everything American, but the truth is that at least some part of me, some piece of me, has been influenced by my upbringing there. There are a lot of things I don't like, but there are some things that I do. If genuinely being very enthusiastically excited about simple things is the dumb American thing to do, then fine, maybe I'm a dumb American sometimes, because that is something that comes naturally to me. I would rather be myself and accept the consequences than try to be someone that I'm not. And you know what? Everyone wants to feel welcome wherever they are, and especially in their home. But the reality is that that's actually a luxury, not a given. So many immigrants in the United States were never made to feel that way, despite the fact that the country benefited tremendously from all the immigration, all the people that risked their lives to go build something over there. Honestly, I don't have it that bad. Who am I kidding? I don't have it bad at all. It could be so much worse, and oftentimes it is. Exploring this topic has really given me quite a bit of empathy for the immigrants that are very poorly received all around the world. So, what do you think about everything I just shared here? What is your perception of Americans or of Europeans towards Americans? I would be curious to hear, because this is a giant open-ended topic, and I invite all different opinions and perspectives on this. It's just something I love to explore. Also, apologies to all Latin Americans and Canadians who are Americans in their own right. I have decided to use that word in this video because there isn't really another word that has been widely adopted to still speak of the people of the United States. So I just used it for simplicity, and I hope that you can forgive me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see all of you very soon.
Wow, there was actually a lot of good points, and I really enjoyed that video. You could tell the difference between the people that actually know what they're talking about to the people that don't. It's just like, it pains me when I just know that they just are reading into the media a little bit way too much. I mean, I feel like you gotta take the media and then actual everyday Americans into two different, you know, categories. Because I can tell you, especially like those group of girls, you can tell that they're just way too much in the media and everything to actually have a good dislike or any really opinion on America, but it is what it is. But the woman that said it's like America's like a extreme, whether you're really, really rich or you're really, really poor. Her perspective, well, her opinion on it was very, very well, and she probably had one of the best ones of just how pretty much capturing America, you know. And my theory with like the language, this is my theory. I mean, it's very, very, very extremely hard. This is like my experience and what I know from around here. Every school system's different. From town to town, every school system is different and what they teach and, you know, whatever. But for everyone I'm around, you gotta have a foreign language to graduate high school. Like, it's a requirement and you have to have it. But most people do Spanish. I mean, I also went to a very small school, so it's kind of hard to, like, I didn't go to a major high school. I didn't. It was very, very small. So we had Spanish, and we took Spanish, and it was a requirement to graduate. You had to take a foreign language. But other schools have different, you know, the bigger the school, the more options that you have. And then I know some schools have French. But the thing is this is my theory to it all. But anyway, the people that took Spanish and learned Spanish, and they're going to use Spanish in their life. So they're going to learn Spanish. And a lot of people know Spanish here, or at least around here. They know French, or like Cajun French a little, and Spanish, because that's stuff that they're actually going to use in their everyday life. And then for anybody that's going to take, you know, Italian, let's say, if you're from the South, there's not much Italians here in the South. The Northeast, you know, can find, you know, areas where there's Italians and where they, you know, speak Italian. But most Americans are never going to go to Italy. They will never ever be in Italy, most of them. So it's like, you're not going to learn a bunch of languages because it's kind of like what you don't use, you forget. And it's so expensive to get anywhere in Europe, or almost really anywhere. So you either know Spanish or you know English, because that's the only two that you're actually going to use in your life in here, at least for me in my surrounding area. You're going to use English and you're going to use Spanish, and depending if you're in the Acadiana Triangle, you're going to you're going to know Cajun French words, or, you know, history and stuff like that. And that's kind of my perspective on the language thing, is kind of like, you're not going to know German, and you're not going to know these things because you're never going to use it, and you're going to forget it anyway. Because most people here will never go to Germany. Most people here will never ever experience Europe. I mean, Mexico is right there, but it's going to take me 12 hours just to get to the border of Mexico. And not saying, you know, and even more for the people that aren't around Mexico. So I just feel like people forget on how massive America is. Yeah, I mean, it's a good video. I like it, and I see both ways. I'm always America's biggest fan, but also America's biggest criticizer too, and know America's faults and hopefully one day it would get better. So, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and like always, there's more to come, and I'll see you in the next one.